Welcome back everyone, Oz here, and today I've got a compilation of r/BoomersBeingFools. Think of this as a good way to get caught up on past videos that you may have missed. Also, don't forget, this is brought to you by GamerSupps. Use code Oz at checkout. It's a great way to support the channel, and yes, they do have caffeine-free versions for those of you who want to support the channel but don't want caffeine. Why are you so awful? Boomer sees my hearing aid and activates my trap card. I was reminded of an incident that happened a few years ago by another post in the sub. I was in a line at Home Depot waiting to use the self-checkout lane when a boomer loudly said, "I hate that kids wear those damn headphones everywhere." He was commenting on the hearing aid I wear in my left ear. I turn around to see some geriatric fuck in a Patagonia shirt, shorts, and nearly purple-red feet in sandals. This is the weirdest part that many have seen with boomers. The comment he made was his conversation opener, I guess. He expected me to take it out and say, "Sorry, sir," or wanted to get into a verbal fight or something. Anyway, I turn and point at the aid and tell him that it's a hearing aid. "Why would anyone your age need a hearing aid? You were probably doing something stupid like..." "Yeah, I joined the Air Force." This was the point that he locked up completely. He stayed quiet for the rest of the time I was there. He never apologized, but I could tell that he had broken a boomer rule of "don't say shit about the troops." So he knew he was being an asshole, but it was who he was being an asshole to. That was the problem for him. I just don't get that mentality of insulting or voicing disapproval to random strangers as an opener. They bemoan the death of manners and respect, but act like punks for some reason. Edit has got a lot of attention, so I'd just like to thank everyone for their kind words. However, it breaks my heart to hear that this was not an anomalous interaction. To all with disabilities, big and small, visible and hidden, I wish you the best. This actually does bring up a point that I've noticed but have never really been able to actually put my finger on, and it's the fact that they do know they're being jerks to other people. They fully seem to understand that, and this is actually a fun example of it because the moment he found out he was making fun of someone he should actually be respecting, his tone changed. Definitely goofy behavior all around, and sadly not even close to being unique, but at this point, not really a surprise. It is what it is, and oh boy. Also, the ending that the poster put down, definitely probably the best way to wrap it up. It is a bit of a shame that the generation that was exposed to some of the most toxic chemicals like lead, Agent Orange, and just other forms of permanently damaging stuff to disable them for life are some of the least accommodating towards disabilities, and that's pretty shitty. Prestigious Neat 307. We had to tell my boomer mother-in-law to stop giving the baby alcohol and don't put the baby in the front seat. Boomer story. This was a few years ago. My youngest, who is now 7, was occasionally being watched by my mother-in-law. He was about 10 to 11 months at the time. We paid her. That's a whole other post. Anyways, I get back from work one day to see my now ex-husband in the kitchen looking worried. He's stressed. The baby's asleep. My mother-in-law is in our living room, looking solemn and kind of pissed. I quietly ask what's up, and he says, 1, he caught his mom giving the baby wine, like out of a glass. He was allegedly teething, and she needed the booze to medicate him. This happened more than twice that afternoon. 2, the neighbors caught his mom putting the baby in the front seat. No car seat. They saw her put him in and take him out. We decided to approach her. United front. We tell her, 1, please don't give the baby alcohol. She claimed he was fussy from teething, and the wine calmed him down. I'll bet it did, fuck. 2, she confessed to the car seat issue. She said he was crying in his car seat. He hated it. So she pulled over on the highway to put him in the front seat. Our jaws dropped. We told her next time to go to a gas station, call us, the other options. She now just puts him in the front, claiming it was good enough for her kids. She claims she always gave her kids alcohol to soothe them, and rarely used car seats in her day. She was not allowed to drive the kids again, and she did back off the booze. I get it, kind of, but it definitely was a holy shit moment. Given how finicky my sister-in-laws were with their kids, I was pretty shocked. I still have no idea what to say about it. Edit, attention people who think CPS should have been called. There is more to the story and my son is safe and sound. This was about 5 years ago. I'm no longer married to his dad. And yes, I did lose my shit. Privately, screaming at my mother-in-law and acting like a lunatic would not handle this. My ex-husband apparently laid into her afterwards. It was handled. Let's please not start calling for child abuse charges. Yeah, it does seem like a common trend for Reddit just to immediately jump for CPS with limited information. Dear God, you could have a story taking place 10 years ago and they'll still tell you to call CPS. I also do know that using alcohol to soothe teething was pretty common amongst boomers and Gen X. It was never done on me, but I do know that it was oftentimes joked about that a little bit of Jack Daniels doesn't hurt infants from teething. I don't think that's true, but I do remember that being a common motif when it came to that. And we've already been over the car seat stuff on this channel. That is absolutely unacceptable. Ready Programmer 651. Boomer parents assume my weekends should revolve around their yard work. Like the title says, my boomer dad will plan his yard work, his one and only interest, around my off days so that he can insert me into them. I work a tough manual labor job. I'm not complaining. I get paid decently and it gives me exercise through the 8 hours of my shift. But that means when the weekend comes and I have my days off, I am sore and tired. I'm not looking to dig fence post holes or plant things or move stone pavers or whatever else he concocts up to fill his time. It happened again this weekend. Literally on Friday, I get a text from him saying, "Oh, you know that one project I mentioned to you last weekend?" He has never mentioned this before. "Oh, that's my bad. Anyway, we're gonna be moving plywood sheets and nailing them to the side of the barn. Why don't you be down here by 11 on Sunday?" We are going to be moving plywood? We? I explained to him that I will not be doing this and he cannot keep making plans and just assume that I will be there. He can and should be hiring professionals for this. He has the money. He trots out the, "Why don't you care about your parents? Where's your work ethic?" Etc. Does anyone else have this happen to them? I'm going to give as much benefit of the doubt as possible. There's a decent chance that your dad just doesn't know how to communicate that he wants to spend time with you and knows that these projects get you to come over and you help with them. So there's a chance he probably just sets these up so he can get his son over to hang out when he doesn't realize that if he just asked, "Hey, you want to come down and actually chill?" that you might be more likely to hang out with your dad then instead of setting up plywood on a barn. That's that's just my thought process. There is also the chance that he just sees you as free labor and that is a possibility and that would really suck. So I'm kind of hoping that it's just him being really awkward and wanting to spend time with you and just realizing that yard work gets you down to the house so you can spend time down there. It would definitely suck if it turns out that he just wants the free labor, but I also, unfortunately, wouldn't be surprised. Immediate Law 1705. I only hit you 3 times. You're just overreacting. Why did you need to call the police? I did nothing wrong. Boomer freakout. Edited post. Just got off the phone with one of those officers on scene. Guy was charged with 3 different counts. I am not very versed in law. Please do not ask me about any clarification of the charges. I have no idea how someone can be charged for 2 different types of assault. Just relaying what I was told. Here they are. Aggravated assault on medical personnel, Class D felony. Assault in 3rd degree, misdemeanor. Disturbing the peace, misdemeanor. Sorry for the long post, but I promise it's a good one. For some context, I work at a busy medical clinic that is its own standalone entity. No hospital attached to the clinic. We have 50 plus rooms being used at any given time and have an urgent care that allows for walk-in appointments. Yesterday, I was asked if I would be able to stay after my normal shift to cover urgent care as the PA working had a sick kid. Not a problem. I do this all the time and I'm happy with the overtime and knowing it's either incredibly busy in urgent care until the doors close or it's completely dead. Yesterday, we saw basically no one after 4 p.m. We are open until 10 p.m. All that changes when 45 seconds prior to closing, in comes Boomer. Boomer's husband, son-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. I hear, "Glad we made it. Looks like you guys were just about to go home." Front desk staff checks Boomer into the computer and then hands her an iPad to do her intake forms as she was a brand new patient for our clinic. Cue the stereotypical, "back in my day" BS I heard multiple times daily about how the iPad is so difficult to fill out for anyone who isn't a child. In the interest of getting home sooner, I decided to get her back into a room, get tests started, and help her with the iPad. Going through the intake questions, everything seemed fine. A few minutes go by when Boomer's husband starts yelling, and I mean screaming, at the top of his lungs at me that their wheelchair didn't have the leg rests like the hospital's wheelchairs did. Why don't you have those wheelchairs here? No problem. I can help with that. Literally part of my job. I showed them how to use the wheelchair, got her legs supported, and continued asking questions. Then, Boomer and husband start screaming and telling me the clinic is too cold, that I should have offered her a warm blanket, coffee, and some kind of item to eat prior to bringing her back to the room. Like this is a restaurant or 5-star resort. At this point, I was flabbergasted. I've spent 15 minutes in the room with the patient helping with the iPad, explaining a friend who you treat like family had cancer has no medical relevance to your medical history, and trying to keep the rest of the family comfortable as their wife, mother-in-law, and grandmother was being treated. I looked at them and said, "We don't have any warm blankets as this is not an emergency room or surgical center, but I can try to find a few gowns or towels we can use as blankets." Nope. Continued screaming and complaining. However, the tone had shifted from, "This clinic is bad," to, "You're the issue," meaning the screaming started to be directed towards me. As a healthcare provider, I have fairly thick skin and am able to shrug most things off with no problem. I generally will just leave the room for a few minutes to let the situation calm down, and then return with a kill him with kindness attitude. I left, ordered the tests I wanted to be run, and went and ended up finding a few blankets we had from a previous shipping mix-up. I walk back into the room, smile on my face, ready to give them the good news that nothing seems to be abnormal on any of the tests and she'll be completely fine in a few days. Oh boy, was I wrong, in more ways than I could have thought. I opened the door and feel like I was clotheslined. I stumbled backwards, supporting myself with the door, look up to see the husband going in for another punch. A total of 3 punches connected with my face before son-in-law was able to hold husband back enough for me to leave the room. We have panic buttons placed around the clinic, and I told one of the clinic staff to call the police and push the panic button. Told them under no circumstances do you enter that room. Few minutes go by and you hear sirens approaching, shortly followed by 3 police officers coming into the clinic. I explain the situation to the police, explain I am not looking to press charges, I just want husband removed from the location so I can treat his wife. Police understand and say they will remove the husband and have him trespassed from the property. Husband must have heard this through the door because he swung the door open, smacking his grandchildren who were sitting behind the door quietly the whole time. The police saw this, grabbed the husband, and detained him in cuffs immediately. They then explained he could be charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault and a count of aggravated assault on a juvenile. He turns ghostly white, turns to me and says, "I only hit you 3 times. You're just overreacting. Why did you need to call the police? I did nothing wrong." Now, our policy is quite black and white in regards to unruly patients, especially since we are an outpatient clinic and not an emergency room. Absolutely zero, and I mean zero, tolerance of verbal, physical, or sexual abuse of any staff member or patient by any patient, family, or guests will be tolerated. I mean, I was punched 3 times by a dude I wasn't even treating, close to 30 minutes now past closing time after a 10-hour shift. I don't know what constitutes calling the police to this dude, but I feel this was warranted. Once husband had been removed from the room, I returned to the patient, now in tears because her husband was just taken away by police. She's yelling at me that I should have known he was just having fun and joking. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I ended up giving the son-in-law directions for her care that I had written on her discharge sheet, checking out her grandchildren, no injuries other than a very small abrasion on one of their arms, and escorted them out of the clinic. Seriously, could not have made this shit up. After being assaulted by her husband, I was the one in the wrong for calling the cops? Nah, that ain't right. Normally, I love my job, but last night was a tough one. Edit, wow, did not realize how not pressing charges lets them get off. My bad, guys. I will chat with my bosses tomorrow and see how I can press charges. Sorry, guys, I'll get that changed right quick. Second edit, just got off the phone with my officer on scene. Guy was charged with 3 different counts and arrested last night, currently being held in jail. I'm not versed in law. Please don't ask me about any clarification on the charges. I have no idea how someone can be charged for 2 different types of assault. Just relaying what I was told. Then we have the ones that we were told earlier. Third edit, spoke with my clinic manager, the doctor I work for, director of clinic operation, VP of safety, chief legal counsel, secondary legal counsel, COO, and CEO for about 2 hours today, 2 days after the incident. We're going to be implementing a new policy regarding workplace incidents. This includes a new form that'll be present in the incident reporting forms that details any officers on site, charges possible, parties involved, and injuries reported. This is in addition to the standard incident report and is meant for possible litigation in the future. hopefully decreasing the chance of someone getting off without penalty with this sort of action. I was told I'll be covered and represented by the company's counsel, who are going to be pressing civil charges against the family in question. Also, brought up needing to do a wellness check on the family and the patient specifically. Was told this will be looked into and followed up on. Honestly, the largest red flag to all of this, excluding the assault of course, because that's pretty fucked up, is the fact the wife responded with that he should have known he was just having fun and joking. I'm genuinely concerned if the wife was just trying to cover for her husband, or if he's created an environment where like a physical assault is just a joking and fun matter, because that is actually a big yikes. Also, it's a bit yikes the sheer confidence they had walking into establishment before closing and being like, oh, look at that, just in time, looks like you were about to go home. I remember one time when I was working at a fast food restaurant, we had a 30 top come in about 5 minutes before close, and oh my god, that was, damn. If they had made jokes about making it just before closing, I don't know if I could have made it through that night. I think I probably would have just given up and left. Thankfully, they were really nice. They just ordered a lot of fries, but oh my god. Scariest thing as a restaurant employee is seeing 30 people walk in 5 minutes before close. I'm sure the clinic's pretty used to having people walk in, you know, right before closing or something along those lines, but it still brings me back to the weird thing of the boomer assaulting him and then the wife being like, oh, this is normal, didn't you know he was joking? That still bugs me, like, a lot. Rubik's Rube. Boomer ruins after-work beers because we have the audacity to vent amongst ourselves. Boomer freakout. It was a stunning weekend outside, and a few of my peers and I decided to unwind from a grueling week at the office with a few pints on a patio. As we got into bemoaning about deadlines, long hours, inept colleagues, layoffs, heavy workload, the general after-work vent, Boomer decides this is a great time to interject into our conversation by declaring, "You don't know what hard work looks like." We politely ask that he leaves us alone, which we should have known translates directly to keep talking in Boomer speak. The Boomer proceeded to go into the standard diatribe of, "You kids these days, you just don't want to work." We're all older millennials, late 30s, early 40s, hardly kids. Some of us have kids. We also all hold titles that start with words like lead, senior, and director. So we all work and have worked our way up. At this point, we just no longer wanted to deal with him and told him bluntly to shut up and go sit back down as his commentary was unwelcome. Aghast at our rudeness, this dinosaur of a human leans over and spits in our freshly dropped pitcher of beer and calls us rude. We signal over the server, explain the situation with a fresh wad of Boomer Lug floating in our beer. She swipes it away and we can hear the bartender and manager over at the Boomer's table asking them to leave. What we did not expect is that the bar, not wanting to take the L, threw in the cost of the pitcher on his tab, which they were demanding be closed out immediately. He had loudly protested, "$40? Are you people crazy? I shouldn't have to pay for that. That's too much," with a gentle threat to either pay or have the police sort it out. The Boomer conceded. As he exited, he glared at us the whole way out. Yeah, Boomer, $40 is what you pay for a pitcher of a decent quality beer in the economy you created. For a little extra salt, being somewhat regular at the bar literally across the street from work, the establishment did end up comping us both the pitchers we drank for the night. They just wanted to teach him a lesson. The spitting part seems to be uniquely Boomer, and it does sound like something they would do. I also just have been getting the sense over doing this for a bit now that most Boomers seem to have the archetype personality of complaining is a competition. It's not just simply venting, be like, damn, dude, this sucks. It's, oh, I have it worse. They always get a one-up you on their complaining, and if they feel like that you've one-upped them and they can't compete, suddenly you have it too good, or you just don't understand, or you just don't get it, or you get your beer spat in, apparently. I don't know. There does seem to be a fundamental attempt at one-upsmanship with most Boomers, so I do wonder if that's just kind of like a outlier squeaky wheel gets the grease, or if that is just a fundamental part of their generation. Genuinely curious, I don't know. What do you all think? Mermaid Dolphin. Boomer comments on me buying sushi on Memorial Day and then thanks me for my sacrifice. I ran up to the grocery store today and threw some sushi in my cart for lunch. Boomer sees this and comments how I should be eating American food today because it's what the troops who lost their lives fought for. Like, seriously? I come from a line of Air Force officers, dad, brother, 2 brother-in-laws, and a father-in-law. And if I asked any of them if they fought for hamburgers and hot dogs, they'd laugh in my face. Just not being in the mood today, I just shot back. My brother-in-law was killed in action, so we have sushi on Memorial Day to honor his memory, because it was his favorite food. You could see the smoke coming from his ears trying to think how to backpedal because he disrespected the one thing that they believe should never be disrespected. He leaves with the, "Thank you for your sacrifice," and then scurries away. Like, fuck off and keep your comments to yourself. This isn't a happy holiday for everyone. Honestly, this might be a bit of a hot take here, but grocery store sushi is probably more American than traditional sushi that you would actually get from a restaurant, so I don't know. I'm probably gonna get drawn and quartered for saying that, but come on. The sushi in those little plastic tins? Come on. Man, I know they have that like Japan and like other countries and whatnot, but that feels, I don't know why, but grocery store sushi just feels uniquely American. And again, once more, we have the usual boomers being rude for the sake of being rude and trying to prove a point. Then once they find out they're disrespecting the troops or family members of troops, they scuttle away and, hide themselves in shame. KEYZ 30. I wouldn't be surprised if I got that wrong because apparently I've been finding really stupid ways to screw up names, so that's always fun. Do you know who the hell I am? No? This happened 2 years ago. My partner and I had just bought our first house in an estate sale. For those of you who haven't been through the process, it can be a bit stressful as the sellers are typically not required to share any information about the property. You're mostly buying as is. We love the house, and though it's had more warts on it than we wanted, I wouldn't have done anything differently. After a few months of preparing and repairing the property, we moved in. I was lounging on our couch when I noticed an old man walking 2 dogs. This normally wouldn't catch my attention, but normally dog walkers aren't 10 feet on my front lawn. I still probably wouldn't have cared, but at that moment, the larger of the 2 dogs took a fat dump in my yard and the old man ignored it. I opened the front door and greeted him with, "Hello, how are you doing today? Please pick that up and don't do it again in the future. Thanks." I thought this was pretty reasonable, but the old man apparently disagreed. He just turned around and stared at me a moment before poking himself in the chest and saying those words, "Do you know who I am?" Obviously, I didn't, and said as much. Also, I didn't care. I just wanted his dogs to stop shitting on my lawn. Well, I'm Mr. Son of previous owner of that house, and in this neighborhood, we treat each other with more respect. Yeah, like allowing our dogs to crap on everyone's property. I told him to clean up after his dog and leave it, or I would call the police for trespassing. Thankfully, he did, but not without another few seconds of his weird boomer tantrum. Why are so many people like this? We have another neighbor his age that is incredibly kind to us, and he says this guy has always been a prick. Edit, you guys telling me to throw the dog shit back at him, need to go touch some grass. So, I know that some people probably wouldn't understand what the big deal is with a dog, taking a crap on someone's yard and, them not picking it up. But the main problem comes from the fact that, if I don't have a dog and I'm mowing my lawn and I'm not expecting there to be droppings in my yard, mowing that up with a lawnmower will do some serious damage to the lawnmower or possibly end up actually just spraying it all over myself with a blade. It's not pretty. I've had it happen to me before. It is foul. But yeah, no, it's more of a common sign of respect. That's the majority of it, but the bigger part of it is the fact that, I don't want to be caught off guard and be sprayed by something that my lawnmower picked up, or have to buy replacement parts for my lawnmower. Bison stole my anus. They do that, Boomers stopped me on the street to berate me for drinking in public. It was barbecue sauce. Made myself a nice batch of pulled pork last night, so on my way to pick up my child from school yesterday, I stopped at the grocery store to pick up some barbecue sauce. Didn't want to bother with a bag for a single bottle of barbecue sauce, so I was holding it in my hand as I walked to the school. Enter Boomer Man walking his dog. I see him coming from down the sidewalk and think nothing of him until he gets close to me and I realize he's speaking. I take out my earbud, only to be greeted with him ranting at me. You should be ashamed of yourself. This is a school area, and children shouldn't be seeing that. Me, very confused. Excuse me? Boomer. Put the booze away. I can't believe how okay with looking trashy some of you people are. At least wait until you get home, for crying out loud. Me, still just as confused. It's barbecue sauce. Boomer looks again at the very obvious condiment bottle in my hand, then storms off shouting, "Well, how was I supposed to know that? As if I'm the asshole." Saw him stink-eyeing me over his shoulder as I left. Bizarre interaction, and yet totally in character for a boomer. The pulled pork turned out delicious, by the way. I appreciate that final update, as that was honestly my only concern. General bullshit and assumptions aside, what's y'all's favorite pulled pork recipes? Oh, I want to go get barbecue now. God damn it. It's midnight. What am I doing with my life? Who the hell's gonna have barbecue this late? Can't even go to a store to pick ingredients up. God damn it. Grover in a pink dress. Boomer at Aldi thinks leaving your quarter in the cart is illegal. Boomer's story. I always leave the quarter in the carts when I return them because of my mother, who would do the same. She always said that it's a very small thing from you that could mean a lot more for someone. She said that when I was young and she was struggling, she went to the local A&P and forgot her quarter in the car and had to walk back, in the rain, with a screaming baby to get one. That brings us to today. After putting the cart back, a boomer woman who was just idling in the cart return area, it was raining and she looked like she was waiting for a ride, goes, "Oh honey, you forgot your quarter." I kindly explained to her that I didn't need it. I go to turn to walk out of the rain and she lightly touches my arm. "Honey, you have to take your quarter back. I can show you." I then tell her how it's just a quarter and I'm paying it forward. This was too much for the boomer brain and she got angry. She starts telling me it's illegal to leave US currency laying around and how a homeless person could pick it up. At this moment, I began to walk away and she raised her voice, almost yelling about how she was going to get the manager. I turned to her and just went, "No thank you, I'm good. Have a good day," and just walked to my car. Why is it that everything they don't like or understand is illegal? What would the manager do? I bought and paid for my groceries. Too long didn't read, Boomer thinks leaving the quarter in the cart is illegal and wanted to get the grocery manager to yell at me. Honestly, the most depressingly telling part about this is the, what if a homeless person picks it up? Oh no, egads, a whole quarter. Oh no, society's gonna crumble. The hell are they gonna do with that? Get a gumball? Like, come on. A whole quarter. Spectre J. Sir, I don't even work here. Boomer's story. So this just happened to me yesterday afternoon. I work in pest control, one of the big companies, and we service a well-known farm supply store. I'm doing my usual inspection, checking things out in the birdseed aisle, when this boomer couple comes down the aisle. I make sure my equipment and I are not blocking the whole aisle and continue to check the traps. With no lead up, I hear a really loud, "Excuse me," from behind. I look back to see the husband looming over me, looking as though he'd been trying to get my attention for an hour. I just kind of stare blankly back and say, "Yes?" He then begins berating me for not noticing that they needed help loading several bags of feed onto their cart. I stand up, point to my hat, and say, "I'm sorry, but I don't actually work here. I'm sure if you went to the front, there's someone who could help you." The boomer man scoffs and mumbles his response as he turns back to his wife, who doesn't seem to have been taking any of this in. I continue working my way through the store into the loading dock to check the last few things. I'd been back there maybe a few minutes when someone yells across the room that I'm not allowed to be in there. Figuring it might be a brand new employee who doesn't know why I'm there, I work my way towards the voice just to discover it's Boomer Man again. I stop, turn around, and start going back to checking things, before he says he's going to call the cops. I ignore him. I've been working for around 10.5 hours at that point and just want to finish up and go home. He follows me all the way to the front desk, and as I'm having my usual discussion with the manager, he's attempting to loudly yell over me, "Is anyone in this goddamn store going to help me?" I get my signature and leave without further issue, but damn, that took the last of my energy out of me for the day. This does seem to be a pretty common trend where if you're literally doing anything in a store that's even remotely not just shopping, they're going to immediately assume that you're working there. I mean, pest control doing your daily runs? You work there. Just some teenager doing some bagging stuff for themselves? You work there. Dude wearing a blue shirt in a Best Buy? You work there. Granted, that's probably actually his fault in that case. But seriously, it's just, ugh. It does give the impression that they just cannot fathom any kind of work being done within a store that's not directly done by employees. I mean, hell, we've seen people at the receiving end of the boomer scorn just for simply using a self-help section, and then they immediately assume that because they're operating the equipment that, oh, they must be an employee, despite being told otherwise. I don't know. We'll work for Doge. Huffy Boomer tells strangers at the DMV, I have no respect when I take a seat. But, Boomer story. I'm in my 30s and visibly pregnant. I don't think I look young, especially as I can't do Botox while pregnant, but I am 4'11". And for some reason, this has made a few older strangers assume I'm a teenager and pregnant. People younger than me generally clock me as 25 to 30, which is odd to see the difference. Anyway, I walked into the DMV, or rather Aussie equivalent, and most of the seats were taken. The people who could stand were standing behind the chairs, and the sitting area seemed to have a bit of a silent agreement to be similar to bus priority seating. I was wearing a really baggy hoodie, so my bump wasn't on display. There were about 3 random seats available when I walked in. It had been a big morning and I could not stand for an hour, so I took a seat and started reading. A woman in the standing area behind me turned to the woman beside her, tutted, and these young ones just walk in and take a seat. They don't even notice people around our age waiting. They don't even ask if we want a seat. They just sit. On and on and on. Note, there were other seats at any point she could sit down. So I stood up, put my things in the chair, and took off my hoodie, straightened out my shirt, which was positively clinging to the bump, and just looked at her like she was an idiot. Some people swiveled around to look at her, and from there, she looked at the ground embarrassed. She shut up, though. I'm sorry to say that no one clapped, and there was no impassionate, clever speech that put anyone in their place. Just silent, passive aggression on my part, so I could read my book in peace. Like, damn, lady, if you're so pissed about someone taking a seat that was open, why didn't you take it? Like, seriously. Even if it was a teenager who just wanted to sit down, there was a seat that was open, no one was taking it, so that's free game. That's just how it is. It's even funnier when you account for the fact that they made an assumption and got embarrassingly proven wrong. But, yeah. Apparently they have to be offered the seat in order to take it, which doesn't make any sense. Honestly, that does kind of open up a lot of questions in the psychology of it, of like, do they need to be offered something so it feels special and so they feel like more important before they actually take the seat? Because like it was open and it was there and there's multiple seats available. So I don't know. I think I might just be trying to apply too much logic to it. DM me your pet pics. My name is Kenneth. Boomer story. Currently sitting in my doctor's office waiting room. The medical assistant comes out and calls for J. Edgar. Boomer nearly runs down this lady trying to get to the door quicker and says, my name is Kenneth. And she goes, I've called J. Edgar. Boomer says, but my name is Kenneth. She goes, I'm calling for Edgar. And she points to the lady behind him. Kenneth grumbled and headed back to his seat. Not too bad, but was funny to see. Edit for anyone saying his hearing is bad, it wasn't that. Context, it's a huge specialty clinic with probably 8 doctors and 15 plus PAs and NPs, 20 plus MAs, a dozen phlebotomists, a dozen receptionists. It's a massive setup. The waiting room seats 3 dozen people easily, and it was packed, so like 30 plus people in our section. We had just checked in and walked to sit down. Within 20 seconds, the girl came out and called for J. Edgar. Despite the fact that he had just checked in and sees 30 people waiting, he somehow thinks the girl is trying to call him, but has gotten his name wrong. Twice. Like, hey, it's my turn, but my name isn't J. Edgar, and now I'm mildly peeved you've mixed up my name. Or, alternate theory provided by other commenters, he tried to give his name so she'd take him first. I've heard horror stories of this happening to Starbucks baristas where they'll call out someone's name for their order, and like, someone will just scurry up to the front and go, actually my name's like, insert name here. And of course, okay, cool. I didn't call you. I'll call you when your order's ready. No, but I'm right here. And so on and so forth. I feel like if it's common enough to happen at a Starbucks barista to the point where it's a common joke among them, it probably happens in an ungodly amount in patient waiting rooms and just other shenanigans and nonsense similar. Actually, I'd be willing to bet that any part that requires your name to be called, there's probably someone who's gonna pull this kind of stuff. And I'm such a socially awkward goober that I'll wait for my name to be called twice before I go to actually pick it up, because I'm worried that someone just happens to share the same first name as me, so, just want to make sure that I'm not going to be awkward and try to grab someone else's order or, be the wrong patient and get called into someone else's appointment, or so on and so forth. And while my brain tells me that this is a statistical anomaly and unlikely to happen, I'm still going to pretty much just double check that it's actually me being called and give it a little bit of space. Fun display 7574. Boomer doesn't understand reserved seating. I've always been a big movie guy. I love going to the theater, and when it's a big time release, I love going to the first showing if possible. When COVID hit, that was a big heartbreaker for me. So naturally, when things opened up, I was pumped to go to the movies again. Even better that my local theaters upgraded to premium reserved seating during the shutdown. No more showing up an hour or two early to get the good seats. When the new Top Gun came out, they did fan showings a few days early. I booked my ticket a month prior, as soon as pre-sales started, in my favorite seat in the house, front row behind the rail so I can prop up my long-ass legs. I burn a fatty in the parking lot, get my snacks, and stroll in right after the house lights go down. Theater is packed. But I have a reserved seat right in the middle of the row. I navigate through the crowded aisle to where my empty seat should be. But lo and behold, there's a boomer sitting there. Now, I'm pretty big, so I question myself. I go back and check the row, check my ticket. I'm not mistaken. There's someone else in my seat. I go back to my seat and tell the guy he's in my chair. He responds, "Well, we're all together," as he motions to presumably his wife and another couple. I just stare back at him for a moment and then, "Okay, this is my seat." He freezes up. And the Karen jumps in with, "We're all together, but there's an empty seat down there." The empty seat is at the end, behind another seat. Worse view and no room to stretch out. Not my preferred seat. I'm dumbfounded at this point. More stoned by the second, and now I'm starting to get pissed. Entitled fuckers. I choose to ignore Karen and look back at Ken. I just say, "This is my seat." Karen starts her shit again, this time with a few huffs thrown in for good measure. I turn and glare at her before repeating myself yet again to Ken. Now, Karen number 2 decides to interject herself. I ignore her too and look to Ken one last time. As I point at the ground in front of him, I forcefully say, "This is my reserved seat. Not that one down there, this one right here." He pauses for a moment, rethinking his life choices. I'm a big guy after all. The Karens start up again before he cuts them off and says they'll move. After some more grumbling, the two couples part and I take my seat between them. By the time the film starts, they've shut the fuck up and I enjoy my night of the movie. But not before I commandeer both cup holders and armrests. Man, spreading my long-ass legs as far as possible and basking in the skunkiness that I just know has clung to my hair and clothes. Bro just wanted to get high and watch Top Gun, even reserved his own seats. He spent the money for it, and that's what's important. Not to mention, they very clearly do understand what a reserved seat is. They just don't care. You pay a premium to reserve your seat, and in some cases that can be an additional $20 depending on the theater. So it's not like it's just a couple dollars. It could have been a pretty healthy chunk of change that, they were kind of just swiping and telling him to go sit somewhere else. I would have probably gotten a theater clerk at that point in time, honestly. And a lot of people do think they can get away with it because people will be too socially awkward for someone to ask if they'll move. Unfortunately for them, the guy was baked and high as hell, so a lot of social etiquette probably was out the window and he was just more focused on, I gotta sit down right now. Witchy Mama, 42. But I'm the veteran. Boomer story. I'm a disabled veteran of the U.S. Army. My state offers a special tag for disabled veterans. You have to present your discharge papers or a letter from the VA verifying you have a disability before they'll issue the tag. While I have a disability, I don't qualify for a handicap parking permit. I should note that my disability is not readily visible. You may see me walking with a limp, but that's about it. I sometimes use a cane if I'm hurting bad enough. The other day, I was out running errands and parked in a spot reserved for veterans. I like these spots because they're close to the entrance, and I was having a high-pain day. This boomer man comes towards me, yelling at me that I shouldn't park there without my husband. I'm all sorts of confused by this. Yes, I'm married, but I frequently do things without him. He keeps on telling me that I'm taking a space from an actual veteran. I ask him what he's talking about. He tells me that I have to move my car and to thank my husband for his service. I give him the confused dog head tilt. Then I asked him why I would need to thank my husband when we weren't even married when I served. The spluttering and enraged look he gave me was wonderful. I blew that man's mind, which is really weird because women have served for decades. It's nothing new. I happily walked in the store using my cane while the man stormed off to his car. You just know that this dude probably had some kind of internal crisis after this encounter. I mean, when it really comes down to the brass tacks of it, he made a pretty sexist assumption and tried to start a fight and corner someone over it. And it backfired horrendously to a pretty embarrassing point. I do wonder if he even attempted to apologize or not, because, seriously, I mean, she was a veteran after all. He went through the effort to specifically tell her to thank her husband for his service after berating her and not realizing that she was, in fact, actually a veteran. So I do wonder if there's any kind of, sympathy or remorse, or perhaps he thanked her for her service before storming off. Probably not, though. That woman over there. My boomer father-in-law pressured his son into getting him a job interview, only for him to try and steal the job of the CFO. Boomer story. My father-in-law is what you would call a typical boomer, and after 38 years of working at the same business, has been laid off. He just turned 59, and he's never worked for another company or looked for a job since he was a teenager. He pretty much got hired straight out of college. Despite it all, my father-in-law was convinced he'd get a new job within weeks. My father-in-law is a delusional and headstrong man, and it's been about 2 months and he hasn't even had a callback. He is spiraling. He discovered the horrors of LinkedIn and is now posting insane things on LinkedIn. Insaner than the usual LinkedIn corporate overlord nonsense. And he doesn't understand that it isn't like Facebook. My father-in-law then basically bullied my husband to arrange for him an interview for a job at his friend's company since they posted an opening on LinkedIn. The job aligned with his skills and it had a decent wage. Sure, it won't pay like his old job, but it's an easy job with fair wages, great hours, and fantastic benefits. My husband even did a couple of mock interviews with him. Now, a normal sane person would be grateful and put their best foot forward for the interview, but not my father-in-law. He was rude to the receptionist because she didn't immediately offer him refreshments. He huffed and puffed because he was upset that he had to wait. He was angry when he was told that he'd get interviewed by the operations director and the finance manager instead of the CFO. He was rude, obnoxious, and bullish throughout the interview. My father-in-law then spent half the interview shit-talking the CFO for not being a man of his word, because he was supposed to be interviewed by the CFO, but at last minute, he no longer could. And the other half of the interview he spent trying to take the CFO's job as he's better qualified. In the last 15 to 20 minutes of the interview, the CFO and CEO stepped in to say hello, and his rude ass continued to shit-talk the CFO right to his face. Straight after the interview, my husband got a call from his friend, and his friend was livid. My husband apologized profusely, and his friend was gracious enough to accept the apology. My husband and I both asked father-in-law how the interview went, and he said that he had a man-to-man with the CEO, and that limp-wrist CFO friend of my husband will soon be out of a job. The man is so far into his delusional mindset that he couldn't believe it when my husband told him he's never getting a job there. My husband spent pretty much half of the day yesterday cussing him out on the phone, and then after work, he drove down to his father's and spent another hour just calling him out on all of his shit. FYI, I know my father-in-law isn't technically a boomer, but I also call early Gen X, like my father-in-law, boomers, as there's sometimes just too many similarities. In my opinion, some of many of the Gen Xers also have the boomer mindset. Me calling Gen Xers boomers has really brought out the inner boomers in some of y'all. I'd be lying if I said that there wasn't some kind of satisfaction seeing a boomer return to the workforce and realizing, oh, wow, it is really shitty out here in the job market nowadays. Not only is almost every single resume I'm going to submit online and I'm never looking someone face to face, but they'll just reject it because, fuck it. The computer didn't see enough things it liked. There's none of that go be a hardworking, honest man and go talk to the manager directly and get him to give you a job right then and there. No. You gotta go through like 18 different steps. And hell, some of them even make you take personality tests to see if you're a fit for the job, and it's generated by AI bullshit. The job market is not what it used to be like 50 years ago. It is a horrifically different. Schmezelbop! How dare I love the ring that I designed? Boomer story. Just got engaged. My fiance surprised me with the proposal and a stand-in ring, and we made the choice to pick out our rings together. I chose a yellow gold setting with a blue topaz. Alert! This is upsetting the boomers. Every boomer I have shown my ring to has made some kind of snide comment, including our parents. Oh, could he not afford a diamond? Blue and gold? Is that what the kids are doing these days? We're both almost 40. You can always upgrade at a later time. But an engagement ring is supposed to be platinum and diamond. Lab grown, so it's not a real gem. I adore my ring, so whenever I get these comments, I just ignore them and watch my beautiful blue topaz sparkle. But then I started getting so many of these comments, I now say to them, these are thoughts we keep inside our head, in a really patronizing tone like they do with me. Anyone else's personal preferences called into question by stubborn boomers on a daily basis? I've already done like a lot of rants on my main channel about why just diamonds as a whole are just a scam with the whole diamond corporate conglomerate, how they're all working together now to try to stop lab grown because, you know, now it's turning out, oh shit, diamonds aren't that special because we can grow ones that are molecularly flawless in a lab and leaving the other ones in the dust. Yeah, they don't like that very much. So now it's the thing of like only a real diamond can categorize real love and all their goddamn marketing campaigns. Pretty goddamn annoying, honestly. But boomers fell like hook, line, and sink for it. You can literally pay like a lab like a tenth of the cost and they'll grow the exact gemstone that you want and get it the perfect cut that you want, and you're not paying an arm and a leg for it. Like, I really don't understand. Rock is rock, alright? Like, come on. Yes, this one came from the earth and was probably mined by some child. But this one was grown in a lab and is pretty much perfect and exactly what I want and a tenth of the price. Do I want the one with or without suffering? That's the real question. Lil B13. Boomer on kept yelling "Brrr" at me because I was wearing shorts. Boomer freak out. This past weekend, my family was all together for a birthday celebration. I was wearing shorts and a nice shirt. They weren't too short, completely appropriate for spending time with family. Apparently, this was too scandalous for my boomer aunt. How dare her niece wear shorts on a hot summer day? She just had to do something. As soon as she saw me, my boomer aunt started loudly saying, "Brr, Anna, brr!" Didn't even bother to say hello to me or my husband. Never said anything but brr. At first, I was just confused at what she was doing. I ignored her and started talking to my sister. Then she started getting louder, yelling, "Brr, Anna, brr!" I tried to ignore her and went to talk to people outside. My aunt followed me all while saying brr in my name. At that point, I just wanted to see how long she'd go around yelling brr, and she kept it up for around 20 minutes. I finally asked her if she needed a coat. Her only response to that was to say, "Well, you're dressed like a slut." I'm still so confused by the whole thing. I've worn shorts before to family events, so I don't see her issue. 100% just gonna call it now. She's jealous because you look better than her in shorts. Alright, look. I guarantee it. If you look better than someone, you're a slut. That's just how it is. It's a cruel dog-eat-dog world out there. No, but seriously. I do think there's probably some, like, they have some personal body image issues that they're uncomfortable with, and they feel jealous behind it. That would be my personal guess on this. Forsaken Woodpecker 1. Boomer, I've got this. Lose his arm. Boomer story. This happened several years ago, as told by a friend who was a military veteran / field medic. He was out with some friends in South Carolina where he lives, near a golf course. Boomer pulls up with a truck, pickup, natch, and starts a conversation with a few people, and mentions his plan to go into one of the water hazard little man-made ponds to retrieve balls. He has his little side business of selling them back to golfers, he boasts. Anyone within earshot warns him of the large alligator currently in said pond. Someone who works at the golf course says that it's a terrible idea. This alligator is already a problem. He's not worried. "I do this all the time! You kids are too cautious, I've got this!" Wades in. Said alligator promptly tears his arm off from the shoulder joint in front of everyone. Luckily, my field medic friend is in attendance for the show, keeps Boomer alive while waiting for the ambulance. Now, they're all waiting to get the arm back for possible reattachment. Alligator, having been so rudely interrupted during his dining plans, sits in the water with the arm in his mouth, snarling, patiently waiting for the second course. The local news shows up. The gory pics are disgusting. You can see the actual ball joint of the arm bone. Ugh, goddamn. They get the arm back eventually, but it's mangled beyond repair. Boomer sues golf club. Yeah, so this is actually probably real. I googled it. Sure enough, South Carolina, there was a golf course that had someone who had their arm torn off. Granted, this does add some new fun elements to it, like he was collecting golf balls to sell back to golfers. But yeah, this sucks. Like, fundamentally. I mean, I do feel bad that his arm was torn off, but at the same time, it's like, buddy, you went to go play with literally an alligator. I don't know what you were expecting. They're mini dinosaurs. The man was warned there is an alligator in that pond. He said they're being cautious babies, waded into the water, got his arm ripped off. Like, don't get me wrong, I feel bad, but you did do this to yourself. And granted, this was also like 15 years ago from what I found from Googling, but at the same time, like, holy hell, dude. You picked a fight with an alligator. What were you expecting? Let's Hill 36. Boomer was positive we opened at 8 a.m. Boomer's story. Hello, but in Spanish. Been a fan of this sub for months, and my experience earlier this week has made me want to share. So, I work for a large music retailer in Canada. I work as the store's shipper/receiver, so I'm always the first one at the store, and thankfully, I don't have to deal with any customers. I usually show up around 8 and start working around 8:30, and the store opens at 10. My office is a door that opens into the parking lot and our little loading bay, and I like to keep the door open to let some light and fresh air in. Occasionally, I get people trying to come in, talk to me, return stuff through my door, but I always politely tell them where the actual store entrance is. Now, just a few days ago, I start my usual routine of putting on a YouTube video while starting my day. Around 9 a.m., I notice a big old Jeep park in the lot, and two boomers get out and head right for me. The head boomer asks if he can come in through my door, and I tell him we're actually not open for another hour. I could just see the confusion and anger begin to bubble up on his face, and he says, "No, you're open at 8. I reiterate that we are, in fact, open at 10. He insists we should be open now. I tell him we open at 10 every day except Sundays, which is 12. He huffs and puffs and pulls out his phone, muttering to himself that he clearly checked and was sure it said 8 a.m. 15 seconds later, his face sinks with disappointment and even more anger as he realized he fucked up. But of course, instead of conceding he made a mistake, he says, "Well, that's fucking stupid. You should be open at 8. Can you just let me grab my gear?" I tell him, since I'm just the shipper, I don't do any customer transactions, and no one else is here yet, so he'll just have to wait. The other gentleman was polite and understanding, but lead boomer was... That's lead boomer. Fuck. I'm so used to seeing lead and boomer together in the same sentence. But lead boomer was fighting the urge to tantrum out right there in the parking lot. Eventually they left and came back at 10, and I gotta sit in the back and not deal with any boomer nonsense. This unfortunately reminds me of the time where I made this mistake when I was working my first job. A old couple came to the door and it was 7:30, we opened at 8, my car was parked out front, and they were tapping on the window. I was really confused. I opened the door and they came inside and I told them, "Hey, we're not open yet." Like, "Oh, could you just make an exception? We're in a rush." I mistakenly allowed it to happen. This was also my first shift on my own, and because I had just finished the opening cycle, all the machines were ready. I took their order, I made their food, everything was good to go, and they went on their way, and I was like, okay, cool, nothing more of it. 3 days later, I come back and I hear that there's a couple who has been showing up every day at 7:30, and they ratted me out and said, "Well, we got in a couple days ago, 30 minutes early, so you should let us in as well." And they had been doing that almost every day since I made the mistake of doing it, and I got in trouble for it because it was also my first shift, and it sucks. I was 16 at the time and I didn't know any better. Carpenter dazzling. Boomer upset I spoke with someone I didn't know. Boomer's story. I stopped by the Lincoln Park Zoo because I had an hour to kill and it's free. As I'm drinking my iced coffee in the shade and watching the seals, a little boy that was there with his family asked me why there was only one seal. So I pointed out another one sunning itself, and he told me he thought it was a rock. His parents were right there with his mom listening and pointed out the seals to his siblings. After they walked away, this older woman with an unnatural red hair and beaded jewelry, sold only in the museum gift shops, but very sensible shoes, marched up to me to ask if I knew them, and I said no. "Why are you talking to a child you don't know?" He asked me a question. "Only weirdos talk to children they don't know." Okay, I just wanted to enjoy my iced coffee without all of this. "I should tell someone." "Okay. What is wrong with you?" She's getting a little loud to attract attention. The seals are next to a large plaza. She was looking around to see if anyone was listening so she could feel vindicated? Important? No real idea. I just wanted her to go away. "Listen," the kid asked me a question. I answered. His parents were right there. "And I'm not sure why you're involving yourself." "In my day?" Oh god, here we go. "Men alone wouldn't talk to unknown children." I decided to go nuclear and end the conversation before she felt entitled to any more of my day. In your life, you're tolerated, but not liked. Everyone you know is waiting for you to pass on, so they no longer have to put up with you. Tell anyone you would like. Just go away, but quit looking for non-existent problems to involve yourself. Sputter, sputter, sputter. No, just go away. We're done. And surprisingly, she wandered away, probably to find a new non-issue to create, but that's someone else's boomer story. On a semi-related note, I found this in the comments and I wanted to share it because it's really good. Proper career, 6771. A little kid traumatized me at the zoo once. I live in a legal state with decent public transit, and I was having a rough time after my divorce. So one day, I thought I should treat myself to a fun solo outing. I stopped by the green shop one beautiful early summer day, grabbed a strongly medicated gummy, popped it in my mouth, and hopped on the train to go to the zoo. I figured it would kick in shortly after I arrived. On the trip down, I noticed the train was steadily getting full of young families. I didn't think too much of it until I got to the zoo, and there was this river of people flowing into the front entrance. I go to get my ticket and pay, then the cashier says, "Oh, no payment, it's free." It was free day at the zoo and I had no idea. That explained the horde of small children, but I was committed to having a nice day, so I just rolled with it and walked into the zoo. An hour later, I'm far in the back of the park away from the crowds near the primate exhibit, wondering what the monkeys are thinking about. This little girl walks up next to me with a school notebook and asks, "Excuse me, mister, what monkeys are these?" I point her to the information plaque, explain their mandrills, and she should read here for more information. 2 minutes go by and she's taking a few notes and I hear, "Excuse me, mister, what's a harem?" Y'all, my soul left my body. I literally looked around for the cameras. There was just her extremely large dad about 20 feet away watching my every move. And thankfully he was out of earshot. Great. I looked at her and she pointed at the plaque. The male is brightly colored so he can lead his harem of females to the jungle. I'm choking and sputtering a bit when she asks, "Does it mean his girlfriend?" "Yes! Yep, Is his girlfriend? Mm-hmm. Any more questions?" "Nope, okay, cool, bye." And I booked it to a different exhibit. Kids do say the darndest things. So the boomer story just kind of sucks because I know for a fact that she's just trying to embarrass someone and stroke her superiority complex. But the one about taking an edible in a zoo and being asked by a child what a harem is? Oh my god. I don't even know what the hell I would do in that situation. Doesn't help that he was under the influence, and let alone a child is asking you a relatively charged question and their father is right behind you, probably ready to add you to that monkey exhibit if you're not careful, and oh god. Shoe Repulsive 6434. Boomer freaked out when he found out I'm not part of his HOA. Boomer freak out. My parents had this rental property that they passed on to me when they died, and the house has been there since before the neighborhood next to it was built, so it's not part of its HOA. It's been established several times with the previous renters and my parents. While we were renovating to prepare to move in, we installed gates at 3 entrances to the property because we didn't want people to come into the property. A month after we finished, we had a visit from this boomer, who opened our back gate since the front one is locked, just to leave us the welcome to the HOA packet. I told them that we are not part of the neighborhood, so the HOA doesn't apply to our property. He huffed and said that I am, since his property is right next door. I nicely repeated myself and asked him not to come into my property again without permission. He scoffed, saying he didn't see any no trespassing signs, so he could do what he wanted. Eventually, he left. The next day, we installed locks on the gates and no trespassing signs. The next thing we know, we're getting HOA violation letters in our mailbox. The letters also listed things that were happening in our backyard that someone could only see if they were looking over the fence. After the fifth notice, that threatened eviction, I called the number listed and explained to a lady the situation, and she said that the HOA president said we were, and was the one reporting us, but all we had to do was prove we weren't, and they would waive the fines and leave us alone. I gathered the paperwork and went to the next meeting where I gave them the paperwork which proved I was right. The boomer then lost his mind and said that it didn't matter and we still need to follow his rules and change the things he wanted. Apparently, the reasons he was upset is that we installed gates and fixed the fence that prevented him from going where he wanted when he went on his walks. The gate's fence also prevents his family from taking a shortcut to the pool. The backyard was filled with things he didn't want seeing from his second-story balcony, and the trees we planted and the new fence prevented him from seeing our entire property. He got so angry that he needed to be brought to a different room. I left soon after, but I haven't heard a thing since. It's just honestly amazing how entitled some boomers are. Ah yes, the fabled no trespassing sign is what determines whether or not someone is trespassing. So for my European viewers, or for those of you who may be living in an apartment complex, it's very common nowadays, especially with the amount of farmland being bought up and turned into neighborhoods, for two separate companies that are buying that land to essentially combine and make one neighborhood. The only thing is those two companies will have different HOAs or different rules guiding that. And you can literally have it where two houses are on the same street right next to each other, but part of two different neighborhoods and two different systems, two different builders, different plants, lawn regulations, the works, and everything. This is becoming really common, and it can lead to situations like this where someone believes they're entitled, and now, for some reason, the burden of proof is on you apparently to prove that you're not part of an HOA. I think that's personally bullshit. I also find it absolutely revolting that they were willing to evict this person from their home because they put up a fence because they couldn't easily make it to the pool anymore. Emergency Falcon, 27-2. Boomer tells 5-year-old to shut up at the Children's Museum. Boomer story. Edit. Dang, a frightening number of y'all are talking like you'd assault this guy, and I can't tell if you're kidding. Dude was an asshole and off his rocker, but no physical threat. This one is comparatively mild next to other stories on the sub, but it's so tacky and stupid and representative of how miserable boomers get when people are enjoying themselves. We took our daughter to the city's Children's Museum. I mean, it's right there in the name. It's a place for children. And as such, one would expect there to be lots of children, right? We were well into summer vacation. Obviously, kids aren't in school right now. The museum has a lot of interactive hands-on exhibits. Again, it's the Children's Museum. There's also a planetarium. We line up outside, the doors open, and we make our way into the theater, and there's one of those old white dudes with a crusty ponytail and ball cap, parked in his seat. As families are filling in, he's shushing all the kids, telling them it's a movie theater, and they need to stay quiet. He's getting odd looks, but mostly being ignored. No one is being loud, by the way. Just the standard commotion of people finding their seats in a theater. And because we are at the Children's Museum, a lot of them are in fact children. Well, everyone settles in, and before the show starts, there's the standard announcement to, please keep your phones off during the show, blah blah blah. Nothing on the screen. Somewhere behind me I hear a kid ask his mom what the movie is. She says something about planets and space and stuff, and he excitedly starts talking about the solar system. He was not being loud at all. The show hasn't started, and the theater lights haven't even dimmed yet. The boomer, with absolutely zero discretion in his tone, goes, "Hey, shut that kid up!" There's a brief stunned silence. The kid starts to say something again, and his mom quickly shushes him, and the guy does it again. "I said, shut that kid up!" Silence. Super awkward. Fuck this guy. I turn around and angrily tell him to knock it off. It's just a kid, and the show hasn't even started. He often says that no one should be talking in the theater. The show starts. There's animations of supernovas and comments and all of that, and the couple times the kid starts to express amazement, he's quickly shushed by his mom. So sad. 40 minutes later, it's over, and that asshole boomer slept through the whole thing. As we leave, he's still there snoring. More like choking and hacking on his own saliva. Maybe he died there, I don't give a fuck. Why? He was there by himself, which isn't inherently wrong, but why go to a place that is obviously going to be populated by a lot of kids and get mad about kids being there? Would he go to a football game and get pissed at people cheering at a touchdown? Is it just a sheer hatred for children? Too long didn't read. Boomer yells at children for enjoying the children's museum. So, yeah, violence is not the answer in this situation, but I do feel bad for the mother because she was put in a really uncomfortable situation where her child has been robbed of childhood whimsy by this grouchy old man, and she didn't want to have a confrontational incident where everyone would be blaming her for the man's outburst. I don't think the mom was trying to be mean to her child. I think the mom was just heavily embarrassed by the fact the old man was actively yelling at her child and trying not to start anything up or cause problems for anyone else there, which sucks because space is cool. Even as an adult, I love space. I would love to see a show like this, and seeing younger kids interested in space and the fucking awesomeness that is the cosmos is cool. Instead, you got this grumpy old guy who doesn't like it when children get whimsical. Let them enjoy that. Let them be curious. Let them explore their little brains. And I feel bad for the kid because seeing children actively wanting to pursue knowledge is really endearing to me. I like seeing kids want to learn things because I was like that. I like learning things, and it gives me a little bit of hope in the future. And plus, when a child is actively wanting to learn something and they're shut down from it, it kind of closes them off from the world. But when they're encouraged to actually just learn and explore the world around them, I feel like that's just the right thing to do. I don't know. I don't blame the mother at all in this situation because she was put in a really difficult spot, but I know, at least for me, that for any child, whether it's mine or someone else's, I would want them to know that not even the sky should contain their limits. And in this situation, that guy in the planetarium who fell asleep made that child very aware of an arbitrary limit that he wanted to impose because he couldn't handle a child going, "Whoa!" in a planetarium. My heart actually breaks the fact this kid wasn't allowed to enjoy something in a children's museum, and his mom had to act as a muzzle because this guy was yelling at her because her son was excited. Deadhead Steve. Boomer stuck in the 80s economy. Boomer story. I worked for a locksmith, had a boomer come in for a car key and couldn't comprehend spending our quoted price. Got angry and shouted at one of my apprentices. After him finding out the old owner had sold the company, he called us thieves and left in a huff. The key's costing almost as much as the car! Few hours later, he came back in with his tail between his legs. He had gone to a car dealership and their cost was almost double ours, and every other locksmith he contacted had higher prices. He then mentioned the cost was still too high and tried to haggle me down before I could even talk. Straight away, I asked him to leave and try elsewhere. I don't give a fuck how old you are. No one abuses my workers and attacks my integrity. Go haggle someone else. The entire world has doubled in price since COVID, and I'm sick of these out-of-touch people taking their frustrations out on us. I hope the next locksmith charges you double to your humble, wrinkly ass. I wanted to include this one because I've had to get a car key replaced, and back in 2016 for my car, which was released in 2005, it was like $200. I learned a few other horrifying facts in my car that day, like how there's a little box in my car that can only have 5 keys assigned to it. And if there's any more than that, then they have to replace the entire box in the car, and that's like $1,500 to replace. That wasn't fun to learn. But the other thing that I learned that day was apparently the key's grooves to determine the lock pattern is directly related to the VIN. So in theory, if you know the VIN and you know the encoding combination, you can essentially just make your own key. But I don't know. That might just be a specific thing with the car brand that I was dealing with. But I thought that was really cool, but also kind of creepy when I realized the implications of it. Because it's like, oh, you can find the key from the VIN. And then it was like, oh, what's stopping someone else from doing that and just making a clone copy of my key by getting my VIN? Because I was shocked to show up to the dealership and they just handed me the key. everything was already done, and it was like, oh, that's really cool, but really weird at the same time. I didn't have to look at my key, they just had it ready for me. But yeah, getting a car key replaced is expensive as hell. Sir Beard Dick. Boomer can dish it out but can't take it. Boomer story. We recently moved into a house in a nicer neighborhood with an HOA and all that. A few weeks ago, I was talking to my neighbor when a boomer couple he knew walked up and started chatting with us. We talked for a bit, and the boomer lady with a big old cross around her neck says something along the line of, "Are you Christian? Please tell me you're at least Catholic." I told her I was raised Catholic and left it at that. I tried to change the subject, but she kept up about us needing to go to church and get my baby baptized and blah blah blah. I finally got tired of it and say, well, I'm actually an atheist. This lady looks at me shocked and disgusted and said, "Oh, I was just beginning to like you." To which I replied, "Yeah, and I was just beginning to like you as well." And the look on her and her husband's faces were great. They were stunned, speechless for a couple of seconds, then started saying how rude and disrespectful it was to say that. I just laughed, told them to have a nice night, and then walked away. My wife was a little pissed when I told her what I said and was worried they would be talking about us in the new neighborhood. I told her fuck what those boomers think, and we laughed about it later. It felt damn good. So I've kind of alluded to this before, but I'll state it kind of clearly. All walks of life are welcome in my community as long as they are both tolerant and willing to tolerate other walks of life in my community. If you are unwilling to tolerate others, you will not be tolerated yourself. That being said, I know that many of you do actually follow a faith, and that is totally cool. I'm gonna respect you and go out to bat for you as long as you would be willing to do the same for me. That being said, to kind of put this into just general perspective of what this is like, because I know that members of my audience who are agnostic or atheist are probably all too familiar with this. Imagine you being a person of faith in this hypothetical, or perhaps this is just you in general. You have your own guidelines that you abide by as well as your rules to life that you follow because you have that specific faith. Now imagine someone else of a different faith coming up to you and stating that you have to convert to their religion so you can be saved. It's uncomfortable and even insulting. There's nothing wrong with you practicing a different faith than someone else you're friends with. In fact, I actually encourage it. There is a time and a place to discuss religion. Just meeting someone for the first time and they're moving into the neighborhood, not the time and place. In fact, I struggle to think of what a good time and place would be. I think the conversation, this is gonna sound weird, but I think the conversation on the topics of religion has to be consensual. That sounds wild to come out of my mouth, but I do believe fundamentally that is how you have a healthy conversation on the topic. And this does go both ways, both towards religion and atheists. Look back to Reddit 2015 when it came to r/atheism. It was a fucking train wreck. And that does tie back into this story. In order for him to attempt to avoid the conversation, he told her that he was raised Catholic and attempted to leave it at that, but she continued to press the matter, which led to the awkward conversation at hand, which then leads to the further boomer entitlement of, I can insult you, but you can't insult me. How dare you use my exact words against me? Especially when I questioned you on your personal life. Honestly, you should have just told them that you were a fundamentalist of Islam and watched them have a heart attack in front of you. Dinosaurus. Boomers will be the reason I quit the farmer's market. Boomer story. I live in a rural village, population around 1,000. Our farmer's market is very small and volunteer run. My village does draw a fair amount of tourists, and I love being a vendor at the market in the summer. I make and sell jams, jellies, pickles, and chutneys. Nothing particularly proprietary, and it is a skill that is easy to learn. For real, if you've been thinking about canning, go ahead and try a jam. The Certo liquid pectin comes with easy to follow recipes. I am not gatekeeping canning. I just happen to enjoy it and the market. I barely make more than $1 a jar after costs. It is just a way to support my hobby and have a little socialization. But boomers are going to ruin it for me. I don't understand the behavior so many boomers have about my products. Men and women, quite evenly split, very angrily or dismissively tell me, I make my own jam and pickle, and walk away. Happens like 3 or 4 times over the span of the 3-hour market. My vendor neighbors give me incredulous looks every time someone says it. So I'm not alone in my stunned response to this. What does save the day are the generation above and below boomers. These sweet little women, 85 to 90, will tell me how happy they are to see the young ones still making these things. I'm 44 years old. They share memories with me about their pickling days. Then there are the little old men who reminisce and tell me about their late wife's amazing jam. My age group is happy to find something their grandparents made. The Gen Zs just go hard on homemade pickles. But those damn boomers. It's actually something that I really miss about Idaho, because I moved from Idaho to Colorado, is how many farmers markets you could just stumble upon. And holy shit. Back before Idaho / the Boise area became overrun with, well, apartment complexes and just other nonsense, there was a lot of farmland and a lot of homemade goods that you could buy. And I really do miss those days. If I could find like a small little town that's mostly still farmland that isn't really on the radar yet, I would move there in a heartbeat, because I really do miss having like homegrown and homemade things that you could just go and pick up at the farmer's market and come back with, because it's also pretty inexpensive too. You support a local business, it's made cleanly, you don't have to worry about any bullshit additives. I just kind of miss that, and back when I used to work a desk job, there was actually a farmer's market that pretty much would open up every summer right next to my office, and I would always walk down there and pick some stuff up there. One of my favorite vendors actually used to have just like this massive like bucket of honeysuckle, like the little plants that you could go and like, you know, slurp on. Just kind of as something free that you could grab while you're wandering around and looking for things. The guy did not sell any like plants or goods. It was all just baked goods, and holy hell, those were good. I miss that kind of stuff, man. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget, this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me, because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.